So, depending on your definition of longest running, the title of the video may or may not be clickbait. When looking into the exact answer for the video, a lot of listicles defined longest running mangas by their overall volume count, whereas I am choosing to define longest running as the shoujo manga that has the largest span of years from its date of origin to present day, which I personally believe is more accurate anyway. In this sense, Glass Mask is the longest running shoujo manga to date. Suzue Miyuchi began to write the Glass Mask manga, or Glass no Kamen, in 1976. Most mangas are not initially released as their own standalone volumes, but in serial magazines that collect similarly themed mangas into one booklet. Glass Mask was originally serialized in Hanato Yume magazine, a shoujo manga magazine published semi-monthly. Suzue relaunched Glass Mask in the sister company Besatsu Hanato Yume in 2008 with stated intentions of ending the series soon. Hanato Yume became defunct in 2018, and Glass Mask is still currently ongoing as of the publishing of this video. That makes this manga 44 years old. It's almost double my age, minus a few years. And y'all think you're bad at procrastination? Glass Mask follows a girl named Maya Kitajima, a poor girl who is not particularly beautiful or smart, but who loves acting and has a natural talent for it. Her passion for acting is in fact almost all-consuming, to the point that she risks her well-being multiple times throughout the story in order to complete a role. She's not alone in this borderline unnatural obsession with acting though, and has a rival in Ayumi Hayakawa, the daughter of a well-established actress and prestigious director who wants to prove to the world that she can achieve greatness without her parents' help. These girls' fates then become intertwined as they both strive to better themselves and outdo the other, for the ultimate honor of starring in the lost masterpiece, The Crimson Goddess, that has attained a mythic reputation in the world of the manga for being a near impossible role for an actress. In fact, the original playwright had only ever deemed one actress capable of doing so, Chigusa Tsukikage, the mentor figure for both of the girls. She was a renowned actress herself once before a tragic stage accident disfigured her and stopped her career in its tracks. She now wants to pass on the torch, so to speak, by finding the actress who will finally be able to play this role. Now, being a manga first published in the 1970s, it has its problems. I first encountered this manga in middle school, so I have a fair amount of nostalgic attachment to it, but even in 6th grade, I could recognize the worst elements, namely Hayami Masumi. Masumi is a 24-year-old CEO of Daito Corporation, a vague corporation that wants to buy the rights to the Crimson Goddess because his father was low-key obsessed with it, and Tsukikage, back when it was running. He sees Maya as she performs on stage and trains under Tsukikage, and over the course of the series, falls in love with her. God, I know. There's an age gap of 11 years. And he literally even calls her like little girl and stuff. It's so creepy. He looks like a grown man. Like, it's not even like kind of like vague or like debatable. Like, it's disgusting. Although to my knowledge, this will never come to fruition because Maya canonically despises him for being a ruthless CEO hell-bent on prying the rights to a play from her mentor figure, he does become somewhat of an anonymous benefactor for her throughout the show, through the guise of an anonymous fan who always sends her purple roses. I don't know if I have to say it, but I hate him so much.
Y'all are going to jail! Period!
If it was up to me, I would have Maya realize she's a lesbian and end up with her rival Ayumi, because there is obviously something there, but we'll get to that. Now for some historical context. I can't find any background info to back this up, but given that Suzue wrote the manga in the 70s and was born in 1951, aka the era of Hollywood that Tumblr girls used to love using in their retro edits in 2012, I wonder if she potentially drew some inspiration from the starlets of the era and their dynamics, namely the infamous feud between white women powerhouses Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. Although the feud was largely exaggerated by the press and gossip, the actual dynamic between the two when they worked on the film Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was described as a kind of wary examination of each other, an intense searching out of weaknesses and strengths, not for purposes of destruction, but to find out how best they could mutually complement each other. Which to me sounds an awful lot like another pair of supposed rivals that we know. Another real-life event that the manga and anime cite as inspired by real life is the audition screen test when they're casting for the role of Helen Keller. And they bring all of the contenders into a room and tell them to wait there as Helen Keller. Suddenly an alarm goes off and all of the girls, except 2 attendees, can you guess who, start getting up and freaking out because obviously it's an alarm and usually that means you have to evacuate the building. But of course, Maya and Ayumi are so in character that they don't even react. And then the directors and casting directors come in and say, "That's it, time's up. That was the last test. You all failed except for Maya and Ayumi." Supposedly, this was based on an actual test that Patty Duke, the girl who played Helen Keller on the original Broadway production, went through to fulfill the role of Helen Keller. I looked into this a lot and I couldn't find anything that could confirm this. I did see some things about how Patty Duke had trained for the role. Duke intensively trained herself to do things without sight and practiced with a blindfold for roughly a year. So yeah, this might be one of those things where there's that story that's kind of passed around as true when it was kind of just a rumor, but it's interesting to think about. We know that Suzue did take inspiration from historical relationships, as she stated in an interview that the 2 princesses arc, wherein Maya plays Princess Aldis and Ayumi plays her conniving half-sister, Princess Orghild, was inspired by Western European history. Talking about the 2 queens, Suzue Miyuchi explained why this play covered such a big part of the manga. It's a story that at the beginning she wanted to write separately, and that later she included in Glass no Kamen. The inspiration for the plot came after reading a book about Elizabeth I and Mary Stuart. Elizabeth I and Mary Stuart, aka the Queen of Scots. Saoirse Ronan just did a movie about her. I don't think it was that good, at least from the reviews that I heard, but I didn't actually watch it, so, Just from the trailers and all the buzz and a basic level of historical knowledge, I do know enough to know that Mary, Queen of Scots, and Queen Elizabeth I had a very fraught relationship. They were kind of almost lifelong rivals, with one eventually usurping the other's power. And I think the main thing that we can take away from my postulations and the actual content of her interviews is that Suzue is very much interested in telling stories about complicated women and their complicated relationships. It's not as simple as friend and enemy. It's not as simple as like and dislike. There's so much nuance to the stories and the relationships and the way she wants to display them. And I think that's just something to be admired. And I just really appreciate that. The manga has been hugely successful since its release and has 49 standalone volumes. has inspired 2 anime adaptations, a live-action TV series, some OVAs, and an original opera based on the Crimson Goddess within Glass Mask. There have also been a handful of parody shows and references to it in various forms of Japanese media. Now, once you get beyond Japan, the popularity of Glass Mask gets a little dicey. At a talk show in early 2019, Suzue stated, "I haven't signed a contract for an English version, so anyone who reads Glass Mask in English must be reading a pirated version. I get a lot of questions from the international media, but I find it hard to answer them because they know about my work through reading a pirated version. It gives me mixed feelings." Which is so funny because I literally remember one point in my naive youth that I was so worked up about Ayumi and Maya being lesbians that I was really considering sending her a passionate letter about it and also suggesting that she kill off Masumi. Glad I decided to make better use of my quarantine. She also brought up a case where she talked to a fan who claimed that they had read Glass Mask in Japanese to study the language, but they also told her that they had read a digital version of the manga, and at the time, an official digital version of the manga had not been released. She does go on to say that she's still flattered, and it inspires her to continue to make exceptional works or whatever, but it's pretty crazy because now I can't even send my letter. Like, she's not gonna read it, or if she does, she's gonna be like, well, you pirated my work, so why should I listen to what you have to say? Also, I feel like she has no intention of killing off Masumi. I feel like he needs to. Getting into the reasons why I believe that Glass Mask was so popular, I can talk about why I thought it was so good when I first read it in middle school, because I had been on kind of a binge of like shoujo manga. I had just discovered anime, so I was like, wow, and I was just reading everything I could, and this was always on the top list, so I got curious, decided to read it, and I fell in love with the fact that it was a story that centered on a girl where romance was not the primary motivator, and she had such a complex arc. Like, the kind of single-minded determination that Maya shows throughout the series is something that you pretty much only see in shonen protagonists. Like, she will sacrifice herself to the role to the point that she is like bruising, bleeding, losing sleep, and it's like, you don't see that in a lot of female protagonists. And not only that, but she has such a well fleshed out rival in Ayumi. Like, their dynamic is one of my favorites in any media that I've ever watched or read, because you would expect it to devolve into this catty back and forth where Maya is automatically positioned as the girl that you're going to be rooting for because she's poor, she's plain, she's not smart, whereas Ayumi is like this socialite who's beautiful and has rich parents and has everything that you could ask for. But the way Suzue has set them up and given them so much nuance is incredible, because you get the sense that they truly are these two powerhouse actresses that are competing fairly on even ground for this exceptional role, and they clearly have so much respect for one another. I mean, they also fear each other's talent a lot, which also gives her a very interesting dynamic, but it's the respect that they have for one another that really locked me in to them being lesbians. No, but also it's just incredible to see. I don't know. I think there's not a lot of media that's directed at women that does this successfully. And the fact that Suzue was doing this in 1976, honestly, legendary. I just wish he hadn't included Masumi.